Artwork, critiques, Photoshop files, and reference sheets are all available on my Patreon. Well, hello there guys and girls, my name's Mikey, welcome back to my room. It's time for another tutorial. And today guys, I'm going to be showing you how you can use some basic shapes and simple guidelines in order to map the features of a cute female anime face. Essentially, we're going to be using some basic building blocks to learn how to draw an anime head. And this is going to really help you to understand where to place the eyes, the nose, and the facial features of your characters when we're going to look at them from a range of different angles. Now, I do say anime and manga a lot for this, but the guidelines we're going to be using today are actually going to work and help you for all sorts of cartoon design and facial illustration in general. Now, I have done a mapping the face tutorial before for an adult female face, and there's probably a link somewhere up here on screen right now if you're curious to check it out. But I thought that now that we're going to be getting back into the swing of things on this channel, I really wanted to teach you guys how to draw a really cute younger anime or manga girl from some slightly different angles. Because really, once you learn this, it's going to help make your own character designs become really a lot more interesting than just a kind of flat on face every time, and it's really going to help you level up your own artwork and character design. So basically guys, if you would like to follow along as I do today's lesson, grab yourself some super cheap printer paper if you don't have anything else. That's what I'm using. I've got a number of sheets laid down here on the table so that I have a relatively soft surface, not a hard desk to work on. And as ever, I'm just using a super cheap disposable mechanical pencil. It's the equivalent of a 2B, and this one just has a cheeky rubber on the back as well. So don't wait for the best equipment, guys, just crack on. And another thing that I tend to do is I've got a spare scrap of paper just here, and that's so that my hand can rest on this instead of smudging up my artwork on a page and getting any natural greases and oils onto my work. So let's have a go at doing 3 different faces, and I thought we could start by looking down, looking face on, and then looking slightly up. So we'll kind of imagine our center view lines right in the middle of this page, and I'm going to start down in this corner. Now, the key to doing this is thinking in 3 dimensions, not just a flat drawing on your piece of paper. And I'm just going to go ahead and start by drawing a circle, and this is going to make up the majority of our anime face. Now, I'm going to actually start by moving my hand in a circular shape, just kind of almost readying my understanding before I place it onto the page. I'm working very lightly, my hand is quite far back on my pencil at the moment, and I'm just going to be working in some very fine building blocks lines for the moment. I'm going to be working very lightly, and this is just going to help build up our design and understand where we're going to be putting our final lines later. However, just for you guys so that it shows up clearly at home, I will be making my construction lines probably a little bit darker and a little bit firmer than I usually do in real life, just so that you guys can see what's going on. So you can see as I'm just making this circular shape, I'm not trying to get it perfect first time, and I'm not just moving my hand, I'm actually moving my whole arm in this gentle circle, just so that I've got a shape that I like. And this is now going to be our main starting point. So with this anime head, we're going to be looking a little bit down on towards it, which means the brow line, instead of cutting right across the middle of this circular shape, is actually going to be on a sphere, and it's going to be a line that's actually just lower around here. If you imagine that you're drawing the lower half line to a Pokeball or something like that, you can imagine that this is actually covering the surface of a spherical shape, going round like so. And then I'm going to have the center line of the face slightly off to the left as well. We're going to go for angles today, just so that our characters look quite interesting. Now, again, the center line, slightly off to the left, as I say, and also I'm kind of imagining that that's mapped onto the surface of a spherical shape. But as I go over the top part, and I meet the crossroads here as we go down towards where the center of the brow might be, I'm just going to continue that line straight off like so, just so I understand where the kind of character's face is. And I'm not going very far off the bottom of this circle at all to kind of roughly guess out where the bottom of the chin might be. Now, when we're doing cuter characters, I do find that instead of just the rule of thirds, which tends to be hairline to the brow, to the nose, to the chin, we can kind of squash things in just a little bit, makes the character slightly more dumpy, but increases the cuteness quite a lot if the nose isn't too far away from the eyes. But don't worry, you'll follow along as we go. Now, what I want to do, because the human head is a little bit longer than it is wide, is I'm going to imagine that the sides now that I know where the front is, of this sphere are actually going to be maybe just a little bit flattened off. So I'm going to just go here and imagine that now this is actually a slightly flatter surface. So instead of this line curving across, it's now going over a bit of a flat zone there, just to kind of help build up the shape of the human face. And if I start by the far brow over here, I'm going to dip in just a little bit for where we have sort of the socket area towards the eye. I'm just curving in a touch. And then what I'm going to do is I've come towards the bottom section of our circle here, the nice little bit of curve, is I'm going to swing out a bit for a cheek. With a cuter, younger anime character, we might just get a little bit of cheek plumpness coming in. Again, I'm just using some very light lines. These aren't our final lines to worry about. And then I'm actually just going to start to sweep down in a slightly straighter line towards where the chin is going to be. I'm just going to meet that line here. So I've got this kind of working from the chin up, relatively straight, sweeps out, curves into a cheeky bit of cheek, and then comes out again and up towards the brow, up round the edge of the head, like so. And then the reason why we have this little cross section here on the side, this helps us understand where the jawline comes up in the other direction. So I'm going to start from the chin here, and I'm just going to bring this line, not as sharp as an angle here, because we are looking a little bit more side on, but I'm going to let this line sweep up like so, and then curve up for the jaw, up into the side of this shape. And I'm just bringing it right up to the X marks the spot there, just like so. And then already what I've actually given myself here is most of my mapping coordinates, so to speak, already. Now I know that I might want to have the brow line be here, but if I'm going to mess around with the expressions and so on, we might have the eyebrows higher, we might have the brow furrowed deeper, but we know in terms of the skull, this is where things are going on. Now, when it comes to the eyes and where you want to place them, you do need to certainly think about the eye as a three-dimensional shape as well when it comes to getting in the finer details. But when it comes to just the basic placement to help me understand what's going on, I tend to find that imagining just a straight-on circle and then just squeezing that circle, let me just show you here really quickly. If you imagine a straight-on circle, this is a very rough version, but if I start to look at a circle from a side, it might be ever slightly more elliptical. I've got maybe two pairs of eyes that I'm looking at an angle for a face over here somewhere, instead of two flat-on circles when I'm looking at the face straight on here. Very, very simple, I know. But basically it means that I'm going to use this box section here, which is from the bottom of the circle and up to the brow, and I'm going to very loosely give myself a bit of a kind of elliptical shape at a slight angle as well, just in the middle of this area here. So I'm not touching the inside edge, but I'm certainly not touching the outside edge either. Remember, even when you're doing cute anime girls, you don't actually want to go crazy big on the eyes if you can help it. It might seem like all the best anime have the biggest eyes in the world, but don't go too overly big with your own drawings. It's really going to make things look a lot sharper and better. Then I'm going to put in the other eye. Now, because this side is slightly closer towards us and we get to see a little bit more surface area, this isn't going to be quite as thin as this one. I'm going to just widen this eye out a little bit, and I'm going to make sure I've got plenty of distance across the middle here. If you imagine that two eyes on someone's face should be at least one eye apart. And I'm going to go ahead here. I'm just going to start to put in this rough circular shape like so. And of course, we'll be kind of changing this maybe when we do the character's expression, but that's going to be our kind of starting point to map this out for our cuter characters. And then when it comes to the nose, I'm using this cross section here as a guide. I'm imagining that there's a line sweeping down along this brow. It follows our center line just here for where the nose is kind of going back in towards the face. And where the nose pops out, I'm actually just going to go just beyond our cross section here. I'm not going to go far at all. And then I'm just going to dip straight down like that. And I'm not going to put in too much more detail. I'm not going to overwork the nose or overwork the features. With those cuter characters, simpler is better. And then now that I've got this space down here, I'm just going to go vaguely halfway between nose and chin and just map out maybe a very simple mouth design as well. Something where, I don't know, mouth open. We'll see what's going on with this character design. And maybe I might just kind of indicate somewhere up here that I'm going to have an eyebrow here maybe and an eyebrow somewhere over here. When you've got a face that looks off towards the left, the more prominent pushing forward areas of the face, I should say, so the brow is sticking out, the nose is sticking out, the cheeks are sticking out. When your character looks towards the left, these are all going to move slightly towards the left of center as well. And if your character was looking towards the right, it would be the other way around. Then as well, it's always worth just mapping in where the ear is going to be. I'm going to use a point where this jawline sweeps up and meets into this skull section. Not up here, not really high when we're looking down at this angle. I'm just going to bring an ear shape, just like this, just another kind of oval shape somewhere round about there. And sometimes you might want to put just the edge of an ear on the other side, but I think we're happy with that so far. So basically that's how we're going to be building things up for our simple face designs. And now I'm going to be working a lot more quickly, but doing the exact same thing twice more. So again, I'm just going to start by putting in a circle. We're now going to look face on for this particular character. Let's just get that nice and large so you guys can see. A little bit messy here, but that's absolutely fine. These are our guidelines, sweeping all the way around. So I've got something relatively firm. And then now I'm going to actually start off with the center line instead of just the brow line to kind of help myself understand that this character is looking slightly to the right, but I'm going to be putting a bit of angle into this face and this expression. And I'm also just curving this line ever so slightly so that it naturally starts to wrap around. Now you can always use these basic shapes every time, but the more you get used to it, the more you're going to be able to imagine these shapes and draw less and less building blocks until you reach the point that you're just placing your character together all in your mind. Now again, I'm just going to flatten off the imaginary sides to this, and I'm going to be popping the brow line to this character relatively level, like so. This is relatively straight on. It's just going to cut back a little bit there, and we've got our cross section down there. And then in a very similar way, I've got the brow section here that's just sweeping down nice and long over the main section of this circle here. And then again, I'm going to let it bump out a bit for a bit of cuteness and a bit of cheek for our character, like so. And I'm going to sweep in probably a little bit further than our center line, just about down here, and then back up and around, keeping it light, building it up with lots of different strokes to see where I'm happy. And then coming from the chin, going to build my way back up the jawline towards the other edge. So I'm just sweeping along here and then just coming right up back around here. And there we've got another general face shape. So again, with this particular example, what I might want to consider now is kind of actually just putting in a few other guides. So if we've got from the top of the head to the brow, then a similar distance might be around about here for putting our nose in for our character. That one's absolutely fine. And then I'm happy with the space down here to pop a mouth in a moment. And again, I'm just going to start to put in some general guide shapes, which are going to be helping me understand where the eyes are going to be. So I might just have one over here. Again, I don't want to go too far out to the edge of the face with these eyes. I want to make sure that they are sat comfortably inside the skull, inside the features, just something there. And then very similarly, I'm just going to think about putting another eye somewhere over here, just giving a slightly, ever so slightly almond shape to this particular eye. You can slowly work your way from circles to almonds, just a little bit pointed. Again, it's all just stuff that's going to help you as you go along, but don't worry, these are just my placeholders for the moment. And then with this nose, because we're looking a bit more front on, we're not going to get too much of that top arch and then just a tiny bit at the bottom. We're going to have a smoother flowing line. It's going to be less pointy. And again, because our character's facing right, I'm going to start a little bit from the right. I'm going to imagine coming up from an eyebrow somewhere up here. This is more of an imaginary line, but I'm not really drawing in just yet. And then I'm going to sweep down around about here, and I'm going to get that nose to bump out just like this, and then very gently bump down again as well. So you can see that I've just got this ever so slightly bump of a curve here, and then sweeping up there. And then I might imagine that the eyebrows of this character are here. Maybe this character's got very open, happy expression, like so. Again, just placeholders. And then it's a case that you can actually start to build all these extra bits in. But we're going to get all of our basic downs and come back to all of that in just a moment. Then as for the mouth of this character, maybe I'm just going to have something around about here. Again, I'm just going halfway between here and the bottom of the nose. And this character, let's make them kind of smile and be a bit happier. And because we're kind of looking face on for this camera as well, for this character, I should say, with an open kind of smiling, happy mouth shape, something like that. Maybe if we're having the mouth come up a bit, I'm going to see a tiny bit of teeth down here. Again, I'll firm that up in just a moment. And it often doesn't hurt to put a tiny bit of a bump inside, just to kind of show the shape of the tongue as it sits inside there. And then in here again, just over here, let's pop a little elliptical ear on as well. So there we've got two build-ups so far. We're looking kind of on, and then we're kind of looking a bit more down. Let's go ahead, and one of the most difficult ones for a lot of people is looking up towards a character. So let's go ahead, and once more, I'm just going to very loosely start to get that circular shape in play. Get the majority of the face in. Oh, I've started talking very slowly there. Get the majority of the face in, just like so. Fantastic. And then I'm going to really just put a lot more angle into this one, just to kind of push our skill a bit and really experiment up. So I'm going to go ahead and I will put the brow line back up. Don't worry about what direction anything is facing when you're doing your brow line, because we're just marking this on the surface of a sphere. But I'm gonna move it up quite a lot here, so that we are looking at a very shallow angle on this one. And then that means I'm going to have the center line of this character somewhere down here, coming back towards us like so. And you'll notice this time that I'm really not dropping too far beyond the circle, because we are looking up in towards the underside of the skull here. But again, don't worry, let's just start to map out those shapes. Let's flatten off the sides, and that's all going to make it a lot easier to understand. We're seeing a lot more of the side today with this particular one. So you'll notice that this side area is a bit more prominent. And then again, we've got that off as a flattened shape like so. And then when it comes to imagining the face here, because we're going to be looking up at a low angle, this kind of bump and curve of the cheek is going to be a little bit higher up, and we're going to see it from a slightly shallower angle, because we're looking slightly more from this underside edge here. So I'm going to sweep down to the top of the brow. I will be coming in a little bit for imagining where we've got most of those features in place, but then really I'm bumping out here, and then I'm just gently curving around and down into a slightly straighter line again for where the chin's going to be. And then on this side as well, I'm going to come down from here, and I'm going to start to sweep and drop in for where the jawline will be as well. And this is going to be a bit more of a flatter, level line for us. We're not watching it sweep up and back, we're watching it sweep down towards the main area of the chin here. And if we come and join this up, because we're looking up towards this character, I might just have the ear over here like so, but it's probably not going to hurt to draw in a little bit of neckline as well. So if we imagine that the neck comes from the back of the head, drops down somewhere here, but also if you run your hand underneath your own chin, there's a little bit of a flat area somewhere here before it then actually drops down into the rest of your neck. So because we're looking up, we're probably going to catch a bit of this line as well for this character here. Something like so. I'll just come off and get a tiny bit of shoulder shape in there. And I'll just quickly pop back here and do something similar. I've got the neckline starting from this ear, so that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to come down here. And maybe the other side of this neck is just past the chin, somewhere like so. And with this character here, we're probably going to see it very foreshortened, but it's just popping off down here somewhere as well. So let's just pop back to here and now think about where we're putting these shapes. Well, because the character's looking so far over to the right, our brow line, our eyebrows and features and things are probably going to be relatively far over here as well. And I'm going to again just imagine, okay, here's the top curve of our head. Here's another third of this distance, which is about here. And you'll notice that means that I've got a lot more space down here than I do elsewhere, because we are looking up towards that area. That's taking up most of our viewpoint. So again, I'm just going to be going relatively back to about here. Let's get some kind of slimmer eyes going in. We'll just use that to help us understand the expression. We're not going super oval and wide because there is foreshortening as we are looking up. So we're probably going to see something a bit more like this. And again, I'm just putting in some loose almond shapes. And then I'm going to do something again here. I'm keeping this one very loose and light because this one is not only far away from us, but we're not going to see much of this eye because of the shape of the nose. And so with that in mind, we've got the center of our protruding brow over here. And then we can imagine that we're coming down again from an eyebrow line, sweeping down here, but then we're going to go ahead and we're going to come and bring that curve across that eye here. And then about here, so that we're past our center line, is where I'm going to start to think about that point of the nose curving down like so. So we've got this line coming here, traveling on top of everything, then coming down. And as for the mouth, I'm going to have that just be a little bit higher on this character, maybe something like so, not too big. But you'll see that what I've essentially done is I've left a lot of spare free space, so to speak, towards the chin and other area here. And then it's really just going to be a case of firming up where we've got some of these lines. I think already I've got just a bit too much bump here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to travel this line a little bit further up like so, and let it just sweep back up there. And then I'll just give that a very, very gentle erase. And because we're working just with our very light construction lines at the moment, this really gives us the freedom to move these shapes around a little bit and keep that experimenting going. This eye, I'm relatively happy that it's kind of going to be looking over here. And now I'm just going to go back over to the left and I'm just going to put in some firmer shapes to help us kind of build that into a final looking character. So let's pop back over here. Oh, and remember guys, we've got no hair on our characters, of course. You could use the opportunity for putting in hair to really reshape all sorts of areas to these heads, but I'm going to be going back now that I've got the basic shapes, and don't hesitate to make changes and subtle amendments which are going to make it work even better. These are just guides. Now that we're going to firm up ever so slightly before we hit some time lapse, don't get locked in by the guides. They're not a jail. They are a useful tool to help you kind of grow and express your character designs on top of. Don't get too locked in, keep it loose and free, and then you can kind of find how you like things. So I quite like this curve already. I've rotated the pencil a little bit more. I'm still keeping things fairly light before I actually go in for a real clean look for these characters, but I quite like these kind of bumps and sweeps. I'm going to bring in, I might have over accentuated these cheek bumps a little bit, so I'm just going to bring that line in ever so slightly and then sweep back down towards that chin. All of this I like, and now using this eye line, I'm going to actually start putting in maybe the top hood of the eye, the top area of the eyelashes. So I'm just sweeping over here, and you'll notice that on this side that oval shape's kind of swinging in towards the face a little bit, and I'm just going to sort of very lightly imagine my way around here, having lots of eyelash and kind of darker zones here. And again, I'm still working super light. It's just going to help really kind of define shapes and keep things looking very effeminate when you keep things very dark and eyelashy around your characters. Then just going to have a little bit of hood of the eye shape here. And I'm just sweeping in this motion to also show where maybe you've got the top part, or the most inverted part of the eyelid, I should say. Maybe just making a line there, and then just above there, I'm going to be having maybe the eyebrows for this character. Maybe not quite so angry, but maybe just a bit more up like so. And then I'm just going to maybe indicate the lower part of the eye here. I'm just going to throw in a nice big iris, the coloured part of the eye, somewhere over here. Keeping that area nice and large is what's going to really make it pop and look cute. Let's pop the pupil a bit further back in there. And then maybe we've got some eyelashes and other bits coming off around there. And then in this nose area, I'm going to just have a little bit of think of where I've got all of this. This sweep up here is great, but I'm going to just kind of flatten that off just a little bit. And I'm going to make this line just come straight up here as it sweeps down to there and then just disappear back off here. So I'm just going to lightly erase my way up towards there and keep that over here. And then maybe I might just sort of show that this is sitting on a slightly elevated area of the face. It kind of all sweeps into that shape there. But the only part we might worry about is maybe just a little bit of shape here, showing that we catch a bit of light, and then just reaffirming the shape of that small mouth as well for this character by coming down here, sweeping in there, and maybe I can just put a tiny bit of bottom lip line somewhere over there. Our chin kind of goes into a traditional anime point, and we make our way back up and around, just like so, up towards the ear, and then we've got this eye as well. Very similar thing. I'm going to be going over the top here just to kind of sweep into the shape. Now this side here, on the right hand side of this eye, you notice that this line's a bit longer and flatter than this sweeping curve is over here. And again, let's just get this nice kind of thick zone. I'm not really picking out anything in particular. I'm just creating this thick, darker bar that's going to flick off into an eyelash there. And then I'm lightly just giving it a bit of value by just running my mechanical pencil very lightly and very flatly across the top. And then just going to throw in a few other pointy bits that might be lashes for our characters. And then again, let's follow that shape and sweep in something for indicating the eyelid, the fold. And then we've got the other eyebrow just up here, just like so for this character. And then coming down on this side, we've got a little bit more of eyelash and other shapes, just putting in some dark lines for that. And then following this shape here, we're going to have another very large iris looking towards us with this character. Something, can we come up here on this inside edge? Yes, we can. Something like so. And then let's pop the pupil a little bit further back, a little bit slightly to the right of center. There's actually all sorts of shapes going on here. But there we've got ourselves something like this as well. We can maybe have a bit of light coming off the cheeks for this character. And then maybe just down here in the mouth, I'm just going to put a little bit of tongue shape just in there as well. So we've got all of these forms happening for that slightly cuter design. And then of course, you might somewhere up here have the actual hairline starting for your character. All sorts of different things you could be doing with your design and your shapes or changing the expressions. But there's my very basic guides for those very basic shapes over there. And then now I'm just going to do the same thing up here and along. So with this one, I'm going to start off with the eyes. I'm actually quite happy with the shape of most of this. I'm going to sweep up and maybe just kind of accentuate this almond kind of trapezoidal, is that the right term, shape, by having a fairly straight curving line up here. Let's sweep right down into here off the back of that. And I'm also going to start hooking this down this edge as well, really just accentuating that shape. And then I'm just going to create again, not the super final lines, but these thicker zones are going to be my eyelashes. I'm going to have a lot of fun with that in just a moment. Let's maybe go up there and then flick a few down here and so on. Then maybe just a bit more there. Very light bit of tone, just so that I know what that's going to look like when we're done. Right along here and in there. And then I think obviously we're still going to have this character looking towards us. So let's go ahead and have the pupil about here. I'm going in a very cute anime style. I'm keeping these very elliptical, not perfect circles, but these kind of just touching the top here, elliptical anime eye shapes. Let's get one of those in. Probably goes like so with a cheeky pupil again. We're going to put all sorts of design in that. Don't forget your line or two to show the hood of the eyelid. That's what's really going to sell the shapes and kind of indentations on the face here. And then because we're looking a little bit on and up, I might just get another mark or shape in there just to show the sweep of the brow. And then of course we've got our eyebrow for this character right up here. They're having a great day. Hope you guys are too. Oh, whilst I'm just sketching this in, I must always remember, guys, if you have not clicked that subscribe button somewhere down here, I have all sorts of how to draw anime tutorials and manga tutorials on the channel. All of it is absolutely free. So why not click subscribe? And then we can draw along for more stuff in the future. It would really help me out. But if not, don't worry about it. Let's just learn to draw. So then I've got the other eye as well. And I'm going to just be, again, keeping it a bit more shapely this time. Sweeping up here, then sweeping right down here as well. This is our kind of longer line, but it's a bit more foreshortened because we're looking at the furthest eye. And I'm just going to sweep some of those large shapes up here again, and then let it pop out a little bit more on this side. And then that's going to sweep off and pop out into a little bit of eyelash for us, I'm sure. And then let's just get that going here. Tiny bit of tone. And what I've done is I've brought this eye out a little bit over to the right hand side. So I might just remeasure up the face just a touch to make sure it all sits and looks how it should. So let's just pop up here. Some lines for the eyelid curve. Good. Let's get that pupil shape in around about here. It's always the tough bit, making sure that your character doesn't look too derpy or crazy with some cross-eyed movements. Around about so. Ooh, let's go a little bit lower there. And then what I'm going to do now is just bring this line out just a touch, just like here, as we go up into that brow, just because I've brought that eye open and we've kind of widened it out or expanded the overall form of that face just a touch. And then this cheek curve again, fairly happy with that. Not going to make that any bigger or bulgier. And then I'm going to give this a little bit of chin here before we sweep into that joining line and come up the other side, which I'm already happy with. And of course you've got, you know, a little bit of the side muscles of the neck there going on, but you don't have to worry about too much. And then up here towards our ear, you might not even see this if you're going to be putting hair on your own characters, but this is just our guide to work our way along. So then we've got a little something like that. With the mouth, I'm going to just curl up the very, very edge of the mouth, just so that we've definitely got a cheeky smile shape there. Then, sweeping over that top part, let's get the teeth in there. And then I'm just going to have this bit sweep back in a little bit before we bring that all together in this nice curving shape. And then pop in the tongue. Just like so. Okay, and then last but not least, we've got our angle over here. Now let's keep this, because this character's looking down towards us, they've got an air of authority, but I am going to make sure that I don't have too much point to this nose. I don't want to go crazy. And then we're going to make sure that all of our other features sit where they should do. So things are always a little bit more difficult where we're looking at these shallower angles. I'm going to start by making this eye a bit more judgmental, a little bit more hooded, looking down towards us. I'm going to flick off here, of course, for a little bit of eyelash, relatively thick bar that goes over the top, and then a couple sweeping shapes here. Very lightly, give that some fill, and then I'm going to start to come down here, like so, and just get a tiny bit of curve off of there, as this eye shape is kind of going down in this direction. You can see that I'm starting to think about how its shape is going over this curving surface area as it kind of disappears off away from us. We can have maybe just a cheeky bit of wrinkle there, and then the actual fold of the eye is right up over here, somewhere a bit more in a shape like this, because it's kind of hooded down. And then the front of the brow and our eyebrows on this character, somewhere over here, again slightly to the right of the center part of the eye, just looking down like so. And then on this other side, we're going to be doing the same again, and we might just find ourselves slightly moving things around once more. So I'm going to just imagine that our brow is coming right up over here. So let's have another eyebrow shape coming away from that. And then I'm going to work from here, work from the eyebrow line as we come in. I'm going to have this come down relatively flat here, which means I'm already just going to slightly take away from that edge. And as we come down relatively flat here, I'm going to much more curve this point of the nose, because remember, we want to keep these characters looking nice and cute. So I'm going to sweep this along a bit more like so, and then curve that line in to bring back down like so. That way it's a bit less pointy, even if it is still kind of a bit more of an authoritative pose. Looking down towards us, a viewer, gives this kind of character a bit more power because you're looking up. But then we need to sweep back up with this eye. Let's go over here. I need to show that it's hooded, so it's a little bit, in terms of the open eye area, a little bit wider than it is tall. Let's sweep back down over here. And you can see again, I'm working my way ever so slightly out towards the right. So again, I'm going to just pull this edge of the face line along as well with this, just so that it's all nice and balanced. I could try to fit everything in where I had it on the guidelines, but again, then I'm trapping myself for something that might not aesthetically actually feel like it's exactly where I want it to be. Eyebrow line somewhere up there, and then maybe just a little bit of the bottom part of the eye, and then over here, let's just get maybe something just like this, looking kind of over towards us. Probably something just like that as well. Just like this. And then in terms of the side of the brow, now I'm just going to follow this curve, but bring it a little bit further over. So maybe now I know that the top part of the front of the head, and I can certainly just make all of this larger. Remember, you might want to think that, okay, if the character is going to be bald, we're going to maybe see a little bit more of the top. Obviously, you don't have to worry too much about these areas when you're putting hair on a character, because that's going to take up lots more space, and that's going to help balance and, again, increase the cuteness of your character's face. But in this instance, I might just want to increase that sloping area here just a little bit more to balance it up. As we come past this brow, again, I am still coming in just a little bit. And then once we just go just past this eye towards the level of the button part of the nose, again, we're just going to start that gentle sweep out. And this time, obviously, I'm much happier with how this curve is going. Just around here. It was only the bits over on the far right that we really had to bring out a bit more up at the brow, because most of this chin area is still something I'm happy with. Right to about here, you can see that I've got a straight line that I'm just minusculely curving back towards my hand at the very, very bottom, before I then bring that line here. Now, I'm not going to pull the line perfectly right along here. I'm certainly going to have it along the jaw here, as the jaw goes up towards the ear. And then that allows me just to have the rest of this line actually complete as it goes down the neck, as we look at our character there. And again, let's just take off the slope of that shoulder. Always kind of adjusting and keeping an eye out for how the shape's going to work for you guys. And then, of course, again, this ear, I might make it just come out a little bit more like this, because of the angle of the head, really just bringing all of this towards us, just like so. So there we kind of have it, guys. We've been using these very basic shapes to map in where we can have the features of the face. Remember, you're always starting with your guideline circle. It's the majority of the skull of your character. Then you want your center line in just to understand exactly, well, where's this actual character's head going to be facing? And then you're just going to start to flatten off the sides, and using these brow lines, very loosely mark in your eyes. I find that not drawing a perfect eye in the beginning and just having some kind of ever so slightly circular or almond shapes, or even slightly flatter ovals, depending on the squint of the character and the expression that they've got going on, as a placeholder, then allows you to come back on top and lightly guide your pencil work around to actually build up from there. However, what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to firm up all of this into something a little bit sharper in time lapse, just so that you can see how these kind of guiding stages can now look like for a slightly bit of more finalized face, and I'll see you guys right at the end. Okay guys, and welcome back. So essentially what you could see that I was doing during that time-lapse section is going around all of the lighter lines that we've been using to slowly build up the design of the shape and the characters and mapping out the features, and coming in a lot more firmly with my hand a lot further along towards the tip of my pencil, and essentially putting down a bit more weight to really just create some more final lines. Now, one of the essences of mapping out the face is to never lock yourself in too tightly. You could see that I did make a few adjustments here and there. And one of the main ones, compared to drawing an adult anime female face and going for something maybe a little bit younger, or at the very least a little bit cuter, is to have those features ever so slightly squashed down a bit lower. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've slightly just increased the overall mass here and here, as you could note, that we've got for the rest of the cranium, the rest of the head of your character, in terms of just giving you guys a feel that all of these features are tucking in quite nicely at the lower part of the face, and that the distance really between the brow and the nose compared to the eyes is probably a little bit shorter than you might get on a more mature or developed female face. Essentially, we're keeping the nose relatively high up, relatively high tucked around the area of the eyes. And that really just pops out a lot of cuteness for the character. Another thing I like to do is get a nice bit of contrast in the eye area. Keep those lashes nice and thick and heavy. That's really going to pop up like a kind of friendly female form. When things are starting to get a bit more squinty and judgmental, you'll notice that I've thinned out this area ever so slightly just to create a slightly sharper effect and feeling coming from this particular character. No rosy reflections coming off the cheek for her. But also what I did is extended, as mentioned, the kind of circular areas up here. Now, this won't actually matter at all when you're designing your own characters, because you're probably going to be putting a haircut on top of these girls, which means that you can start to decide how much hair is framing the face, coming down in different areas, and essentially how much extra mass and bulk because of the hair you're going to be expanding shapes outside the zone of the face. Now, I have done how to draw hair tutorials and all about different locks of hair and how they frame the face. So again, just check out my tutorials playlist if of course you haven't already. And if you guys actually want a copy of this image here, the actual worksheet that we've done today, all of that to all of my drawing tutorials is available on my Patreon for $1 if you want to download the entire pack. So of course I've got the links in the description below, and essentially guys, Patreon is the only way I'm able to do what I do. So you're probably seeing some delicious names scrolling on screen at the moment, And let me just say a great big thank you to those delicious patrons on Patreon for supporting me and making these free drawing tutorials possible. Because the real point is I just want these to be free on YouTube so that we can all learn to draw. There's no point having barriers if it's not necessary, but again, these guys help me eat. So shout outs to Akumu Arts, Joshua H, 1010, Hamonchi L, Captain T Salar, Anthony C, Ryder2KX, Michael P, Carlos R, Fabio, Jamie, Melissa, Sahaki, and Brendan J. Those guys are some of the top tiers. Thank you so much for the support, guys. And again, if you are curious about the Patreon side of things, links of course at the end of this video and in the description below. However, more importantly, guys, let me know how you're getting on when it comes to actually mapping the features of your cute anime characters. Are there any other poses or bits that you struggle with? Get in the comments to let me know, and we can make that a tutorial or lesson in the future. But other than that, let me just say a great big thank you for watching along today. I really do hope you found this to be useful, and I'll see you next time. Take care.